Up next on Inside ChampCar, live streaming and wireless questions.
Oh man, I hope I can answer this.
Welcome to Inside ChampCar. I'm Bill Strong. The guy on the screen next to me is Brian Bielanski, and somewhere in Ohio, we don't know where. And then joining us tonight is Eric Kaul. Eric.
Hey guys.
You are the Better Call Eric Kaul, the cell phone guy. Been around racing for a long time. And let's start off with Brian real quick, and then we'll come back to you, Eric. Brian, you've been
sure thing.
You left for Ohio to do some super top secret thing. Is it not top secret anymore?
It is not top secret anymore. I got to drive on a racetrack that very few people have ever gotten to drive on. The Goodyear Proving Grounds in Akron, Ohio. And we tested a brand new SCCA club spec Mustang.
Like a horse?
Exactly. It had a lot of horses. So 19 days ago, it was a street car. And they built it into you were at PRI. Did you see the yellow Mustang?
I did.
That's the car I drove.
See, and I was thinking, this is the car that Brian's going to be driving because it was in the Goodyear area. Yep. And I was just like, man, how come I don't get to do cool stuff like that? I just get to hang out at racetracks every week.
So 19 days ago, it was a street car. 2 weeks ago, they put the kid on it. They drove it to PRI.
Wow.
Drove it back from PRI. And then we had the Goodyear test team and myself and another guy from SCCA. We got to run it through its paces for the first time. We believe it's the first build for the new club spec.
Oh,
so
sweet.
Lots of history made today. So
cool. Very good.
And as my wife can tell you, the only thing she cared about is I didn't wreck it.
Yeah, I drove a Mustang. I drove a TA Mustang like that last year, last year about this time, and the guy asked me if I had a checkbook big enough to cover it, and I said I have a checkbook, and he threw me the keys. It's like, whoa, okay, and then you get into it, and halfway through the turn that you're going really fast, and you're thinking, I should slow down. This could cost me a lot of money.
Yeah. Let's just say I didn't drive it at 10/10, but I had a good time.
Well, that's good. At least you got to do something cool. Drive on a new track. What's that track like?
Well, it's a big autocross pad, essentially. They have a track that they didn't let us go on.
Did you meet Jay Chapman or Nick?
Likely story.
Giulotti?
Jay Chapman was one of our team today.
Okay, yeah. Fred Wolf said hi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he just asked if I knew those guys. So I
absolutely.
Being that he's in Ohio, he probably knows these guys, and they probably do a lot of testing out there. But the reason why
that's not why we're here today.
We're here because of Eric Kaul. So Eric,
no, I actually want to talk more about this stuff. That sounds like
we will.
Like to do on a daily basis.
So I first learned of Eric many years ago on Facebook. You were a how do you put it? A fairly large guy, because you are a large guy. You're like what, 7'2", 8"?
I am
6'9".
I'm close to 6'6".
That's okay.
Yeah, but you
were
5
3/4.
But you were.
But when you're our height, when you're the same height as Bill and me, 6'6" is like 7'2".
That's my son's height, by the way.
I know.
Yeah.
Good point.
But you were a big guy, and what got me about you was that you started a process of losing that bigness and
correct,
exercising and doing the whole thing, and man, you'd lost an absolute ton of weight. And
I did.
Yeah,
and
you were going after a goal of racing, right? Wasn't it racing or something other than getting in shape?
So the goal was to get into racing. I remember, trying out. Remember back in 2016, I sat in a seat in a race car to rent, and I couldn't fit. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And I remember sitting on the scale and it didn't register. I was like, oh shit, I weigh too much. And turns out I was north of 427 pounds.
Oh yeah.
And that's a lot of weight. And, I think I was also losing my way emotionally and mentally and physically, and I pretty much wanted to give up in life after I realized that I couldn't race. And a lot of members of my community came alongside and said, "Hey, we can help you. There are options for you. Like, don't give up." And I didn't. And one of my dear friends, James Candelaria, who's in the hospital right now, he had said to me, he's like, "Hey, I've been in your shoes before. You might consider weight loss surgery like I did." And I said, "Oh, I didn't realize that was an option." And then other people in the community said, "Hey, Eric, you might consider just tightening up your nutrition." Other people said, "Hey, you might consider, doing some exercise." And the community came together to support me, really helped me educate myself on, what I was eating, what I shouldn't be eating, what exercise I could do. And, over the course of 3 years, or I should say 2.5 years, I lost a ton of weight and I became a very fit person, but I wasn't healthy. I quickly realized that I couldn't do these fad diets, and I remember doing box jumps. This is like 2018 or 2019, one of the 2 years. I can't remember actually. I'm pretty sure it was 2019. I fell off the box jump and got hurt, and I developed a subdural hematoma that would not go away. And cut the long story short, we found out it was a vitamin C deficiency that would not go away. And it was 10 or 11 weeks that we endured excruciating pain. I had nerve pain. They thought it was sciatica. We never nailed it down until, I think it actually was 2019, because I remember going to Aruba, drinking a ton of mimosas. I think it was 47 to be exact, over 4 days.
Doesn't that have vitamin C in it?
It does. And I came back and I had no pain. And I remember, talking to my buddy.
But it had nothing to do
Jeff,
with the vitamin C.
and believe it or not, it was the vitamin C.
Yeah.
Wow.
I actually, one of my HPDRE buddies, Jeff Bennett, he told me about a study that had happened where somebody had these types of pains and they had scurvy. And once they were fed, vitamin C, all the pain vanished and they healed themselves. And so I remember saying to myself after that, I was like, all right, I'm not going to eat, I'm not going to starve myself from good, nutritious foods. Right. And then I started gaining weight, over the course of the next, I'd say, 8-9 months.
Well, COVID probably didn't help.
Well, it wasn't COVID that really killed me. It was, I got hurt playing volleyball and tore my PCL. And when that happened, I couldn't exercise anymore. And when I couldn't exercise anymore, I started making excuses as to why I needed to eat shitty food. And I went into like a downward spiral and I gained a ton of weight. I want to say like 30 pounds in like 6 or 7 weeks. Then I finally healed, and then COVID happened like 4 days later. And then the country shut down. I can't get the food that I want to eat. I can't, there's no more vegetables anymore. I mean, it was shocking how the world changed. And I just didn't have any like strategies to cope with, not having access to exercise and not having access to good food. And so I gained weight.
Say hi to your daughter for us. She just walked around.
Oh, yes. I'm literally trying to tell her to go away, and she doesn't realize she's on camera. Yeah, sorry, you're on camera.
There she goes. She's going. Yeah, that's all right. That's what kids are for, man.
No. She's an athlete in her own right. Yep. Basketball, volleyball.
Yep. Yeah, it was fun watching you progress through that whole losing the weight thing, because it's like, holy crap. I mean, I have the issue. I don't think Brian does, but I have that issue, and it's just, as you get older, and you're a young guy, so it was probably much easier than somebody that's older like me that's been abused and played some pretty radical sports growing up to lose that weight. Not hard, it just hurts. So doing all that stuff.
And so I gained it back in droves during the pandemic, and then this year I've been pretty awesome in losing a lot of that weight.
Right.
So I've been pretty successful.
Now,
so did you not do the surgery?
I did not do the surgery.
Okay, so I had the surgery.
Oh, nice.
And it was the best thing I ever did.
That's awesome.
I lost a ton of weight, and I've gained a little bit of it back, but I've still kept enough of it off that it still made sense.
Yeah.
But I'm working now to do a lot of what you're doing because I want to get into some race cars that I can't fit into at the moment. So
yeah, we had to build a race car around me, so that I could race, and
right.
we started competing in ChampCar 2 years ago at the VIR North, and then did Road America and the local Thompson tracks, and I want to say like one or two others that we've done.
Yeah, so let's get to the point which we normally ask at the beginning: is how did you get involved with racing? What got you started in it?
So I don't know what you know about my my Facebook groups, but I've been managing the high performance driving and racing enthusiast group since 2015. Being around racers, being around high performance drivers, being on the high performance driving side, I always looked towards racing and saying, "Oh, I'd like to do that one day. I'd like to do that one day." And so I always made the excuses of, "Oh, I'm too big. I'm too fat. I'm too this. I'm too that." And 2.5 years ago, after the pandemic was kind of coming to an end, I was like, "Hey, I need to go racing. I need to stop making excuses and just do it." And for me, I had the opportunity to do BMW Club Race School,
right?
And for me,
I remember that because you were posting up about that a lot. That was pretty cool.
Oh my God. Yeah. It was a huge, I had wanted to do it back in 2013. The opportunity presented itself. I didn't take it. I did take it. And then something happened in my corporate life and I couldn't do it. And I always said like, if I had gone through the race school then, I probably would not have quit my day job. I probably would have done club racing. I probably would have stayed as a CPA, and this life would be completely different.
Right.
And so that was almost an inflection point in my life, because shortly thereafter, I quit my career as a CPA, pursued my side hustle, which was doing extremely well, and listened to my wife. And she said, "Hey, you hate your job as a CPA. You love relationships, but you're not being valued by your current employer. But you've got this side hustle and everybody loves you. Why don't you pursue that?" And I said, let me do that. I can always come back to being a CPA in the future. Let me give it 2 years. And that's, kind of what happened. And then when HPDRE took off in, August of 2015, and then now I'm, people think I'm famous because I've got this Facebook group, and I'm scratching my head saying like, "Oh God, I feel like a fraud here. I don't know the first thing about racing. I only know high performance driving." So I've been looking from outside the fence, in looking at ChampCar, looking at Lemons, looking at, all these other endurance racing groups. And I just had to do it. And I said, screw it, I'm going to get this done. And so we did Lemons, and I got screwed over by a team, and I said, done.
Oh, I remember
going to start my own team, which is why we gravitated towards ChampCar. It fit what we wanted to do. We didn't want to, we wanted something serious. And it was fun because all of my clients, or I shouldn't say all of my clients, a large majority of my clients are ChampCar racers. A large majority of them are WRL racers. Right. A large majority are AER racers. And I said, guys, I'm coming home. Like I want to race amongst them. And it was cool the first time I did a race. It was actually at AER pit race that I got to see my clients passing me and I'm passing them. I want to say there was like 27 teams out there, and 19 of them were my clients. And I got a real rush from that. Doing ChampCar and seeing another 19 or 20 teams that I support and are friends with, out there. I'm like, that was huge. I mean, I remember my first event at ChampCar trading paint with somebody, and it turns out he's a client of mine. And I'm like, this is awesome.
Right.
It was my fault, but I'm so glad I had that opportunity because I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was timid to say the least. And after I unscrewed myself from that, that mental situation, I was like, all right, I belong here.
Yeah.
And it's been awesome ever since.
So what got you interested in high performance driving?
Yeah, so I've always been a BMW guy. I've always been the BMW guy. I have the affliction of owning 8 BMWs right now.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it is pretty crazy. But so I've told this story many times before. I moved to Boston in 2005, and it was to pursue a girl. And when I got to Boston and we're living together, I had no friends in Boston. And I primarily, would look around as a Yankees fan in Boston.
Oh,
and I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, no one wants to hang out with me.
Because it could have been the Yankees hat you wore all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. But I had a BMW. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to go join the BMW car club. My friend Mark at the time had said, hey, did you know that you can drive your car, on the racetrack? And I was like, no, I had no clue. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, I'm down from DC. He's like, we go down to, VIR. We, put our cars on the track there. I was like, oh, that's fantastic. How do I get into it? He's like, before you can do that, you need to do autocross. And I was like, oh, what's autocross? Yeah. And before I knew it, I was immersed in the autocross culture and my big thing was I love BMWs. I love to drive like a maniac. I think I'm God's gift to driving. And, I remember going up my first autocross and I blew the first gate and I was like, what happened here? And they're like, oh, we have a language called the cone language, and you got to understand it before you can drive flat out. And I was like, all right, this is great. I'm going to get into this. And then so I got into autocross, 2007, did a few events here and there, made some poor car buying choices. I had one car at the time. And then, fast forward to, 2010, 2011, found the world of high performance driving education, the Boston chapter, BMW Car Club of America. I had been appointed, or I had won the election to become the head of membership there. And I was all about giving people a great experience while they were a BMW club member, whether it's going to autocross or track days or karting days or, scavenger hunts or concours or, what have you. And I loved being that guy that was connecting people based on their, mutual adoration for either cars or events. And so I gravitated towards, the HPDE world. And I got to learn how to drive properly. My wife ended up buying me, after we had our first kid, she ended up buying me an E36 M3 as a quote unquote push gift. And I really got like knee deep into it and neck deep into it.
I didn't marry
crazy.
A wife who bought me a car. Bill, what do we do wrong?
Well, my wife said she would and then reneged on that. So, yeah.
I kid you not, on our second date, I taught her how to drive stick in my E36 BMW.
I did the same thing.
And it worked really well back in the day. Before we had smartphones, we had these wonderful, cars. And she was like, I would love to drive stick. And she was a cool tomboy type girl. Like she was the girl that everyone wanted to, to be, in her orbit. I mean, she drove a 98 4Runner. I mean, she was just a cool girl that liked to go off-roading. And I got her. And I think I got her because I roped her into driving manual transmission. And I didn't want to say stick.
Yeah. Let me ask Amy, because I taught Amy how to drive in an E36 as well, the 318 Ti. Remember that car?
Oh, that sounds like the Harlequin romance novel storyline, if I ever heard one.
Oh man, my wife is amazing.
Now,
I so many people are like, "Oh, does she have a sister?" I'm like, "No, she has a brother, but you don't want him."
So Eric, now we're going to announce that your company, Better Call Saul, or not Better Calls. I suck at this hosting thing. Better Call. That works out really well. You're going to be helping ChampCar this season. You're going to be our preferred vendor / help for mobile cellular devices, including live streaming. So that's kind of, we're bringing Sentinel on as well, which we announced a couple of weeks ago. There's their little logo right there.
Nice.
Now, you've worked with a lot of teams that are using the Sentinel system with getting them hooked up to the internet.
Correct. Even tonight, I mean, when, this story starts about 4 years ago when James Candelaria and I met at PRI. And, he was telling me about some of the products that he was working on. And he was like, "Hey, I want to gear this towards instructors and into racers." And that particular product, I was like, "Yeah, I don't know if that's such a great idea." And I said, but, when you do get this idea, I want to be like your go-to guy. Like I will hand you buckets and buckets of SIM cards. And as long as you package those SIM cards in with your devices, I will make sure that I give your clients or your customers the best service they've ever had. And he's like, "Oh, what do you mean by that?" I'm like, "Well, within 24 hours, and if not the hour, I will activate SIM cards." And I said, I was like, I'm that guy that I want to buy from. And I would, and once I have that guy and I have a great service, I will literally tell everybody about it. And that's exactly what he said. He's like, "If you can be that guy and you can give that level of service to my customers," he's like, "I'm going to make you a success." And granted, I'm not going to lie, I'm not to toot my own horn. I was already well known in the high performance driving world and the racing world because of, instructing and my HPDRA groups, and also being, the Verizon guy that, helped people. But this really put me on the map with sprint racing in SCCA, sprint racing in NASA, endurance racing, with ChampCar, WRL. It just skyrocketed. And so when the opportunity came to James to, go to ChampCar for Sentinel, I was like, "James, if you do it, I'm in too, because one can't go without the other."
Right.
We want to, if you're going to be successful, your continued success is going to be because I'm here to support you. Because the last thing I want to do is have someone with Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile get this device and say, "Oh, what now?" And then now they spend, hours upon hours upon hours getting a SIM card, running to the T-Mobile store, at 7 o'clock in the morning or at 9 o'clock in the morning, day of the race, to get it done.
Yeah, I used to, because we've been doing the live streaming for ChampCar.Live for years now. I want to say 6 or 7 years, maybe 8. I don't know. It's been forever, it seems like. We were kind of leading the forefront first with using actual cell phones in the car, which was awesome, except not awesome because they would overheat, crappy pictures, the light changes, and the camera technology at the time just really was bad. But mainly it was we had one fall out of the Bimmerline car, and it just fell out of it. Could never find it until they go to an SCCA majors race, and James Clay goes to hit the brakes really hard into turn 1 at VIR. And guess what they found in the floorboard? my phone.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I mean,
I'm going to toot my own horn and say I've been Dimmerworld's Verizon wireless guy for the last 7 years.
Yep.
So
I mean, pretty much everybody. But the hard part was folks would come up to me and say, once we got it sorted out with the cameras and hotspots, they'd always come up to me and it would always be like 10 minutes before the race. Hey, can you help me set up? Problem is you can't, because I've got a billion other things that I'm doing. And I always felt bad that I couldn't help them out. And most of the time it was due to guys trying to run 1080, which is high definition, super high definition.
Correct.
You know, instead of trying to run 720 or 480 or 640 or something like that. We found over the years, and we still only use 640 in our cameras. That's it. It's just this little box that we kind of explode up a little bit, but not much, into the screen. Now, we could run higher resolution, like 720, and we may be trying that with, you know, since a lot of folks have moved over to 5G, the 4G channel has cleared up a bit. So that's helped us with, you know, pretty much never having dropouts like we used to have. But yeah, it's like, you know, one of these days we're going to try 720 in the cars. Now, all my track cameras are 720. Here's a funny story. I was testing at home using 720 on the cameras. And this was back when we did have a limit on how much bandwidth we could use on the hotspots. This is before the unlimited, whatever. And we're at Charlotte. Sure. Yeah, we're at Charlotte. And people kept coming up to me and saying, man, the show looks so great today. And you know, the whole bit. I'm thinking, that's interesting. What, you know, why do they keep doing this to me? You know, why do they keep telling me this? I think it always looks great. And then I just happened to find a TV it was playing on. I'm looking at it, and we go to the in-car cameras. They, you know, they're a little fuzzy and just, you know, like they normally are. And then they go to one of the track cameras, crystal clear. And I just had this, oh shit moment. It was like, I'm at a higher resolution than I should be, because we were just testing them with it like that. Completely left them out there, which meant we couldn't do the next race that we kind of planned on doing. But because
you ran out of data.
Ran out of data. Now they keep going. It's just really not enough to do streaming. So yeah,
it throttles it down to a much lower.
Yeah. And what happens is that halfway through the day, the race, that's when it starts throttling, or the huge race at the end, you know, where cars are battling for position, and then then it goes out. You know, works perfectly all the way up to that time. Yeah. But yeah, it's
I mean, back in the day when we did this, I would send out like 2 SIM cards or 3 SIM cards, and then have the teams like literally swap out the SIM cards during the mid race so that it wouldn't cut out. And you know, you're only in there for 3 or 4 minutes. Teams would forget.
Yeah.
And then 2 hours from the end of the race, or you know, 1 hour from the end of the race, when they really need to be coaching that driver, they lose all in-car video.
Right. And it was hard. Ed is commenting on streaming's not that terribly hard to do. It's not terribly hard to do now, but just 3 or 4 years ago, it wasn't simple. I mean, you had to know how to run an RTMP server. You had to do all that stuff. Now you can go directly to YouTube now, and they don't have the limitations like we used to have. I think now the only limitation is like a 12-hour limit straight through.
Yeah, you've got to stop and restart at the end of 12 hours.
Yeah. So we end up usually for like the 24-hour, we'll do 10-hour block, or we'll break it into thirds and just do it that way. It works best for us. Though it kind of sucks losing all that traffic on the first feed, because we never really gain them back for the second feed. So
yeah,
we have learned a lot over the years, and I mean, anything you do, you start out as a novice and hopefully get to the intermediate level of learning.
Now,
well, it's funny because I came at this whole thing from a professional TV background, and Bill will tell you I tried like hell to not use cell phones. I'm like, there's no way the cell phones just are not my thing. I'm a TV guy. We can't use cell phones. And now I'm using cell phones just like everyone else.
Well, the crazy part was when Paul and I first started this out, I ended up going, and I forget when that must have been about 2016, 2017. I went to an IMSA race, and it was the one I embedded myself with Riley and got to see a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And a person I had met at a race out in Sonoma does Radio IMSA, and John and what's the English guy that helps him? I cannot think of his name. He's actually raced with us, but they were doing their commentary at the track, and I found out where they were, and I went and hung out with them for a while. And talking with them, found out that everything that was happening to us happens to them. The same thing with Bob Varsha. We were talking with him, and basically the same thing.
That's right.
That the same problems we have, they were having in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even today they still have those same issues. But I ultimately was able to talk with, I think it was 3G Productions. They were the company that put on, that actually at the time ran all the in-car cameras and did all the really cool stuff for IMSA and Radio Le Mans. They after talking with them, they asked how we were doing the show. They kind of looked at the tech, and they said, "Yeah, we can't use cellular because when you're doing TV, you have to." They did it through radio, all the
Sure.
video signals through radio, and it has to be super reliable. Of course, then I looked into, well, they didn't want to talk until I had six figures in hand, and that wasn't going to happen on a ChampCar budget. So, yeah, we ended up figuring it out. The great fix was the Yi cameras. And I think Scott Barton was the one that connected me up with the Yi. You know, he was playing around with the Yis, and so I bought one and kind of used it a bit, and then I realized that, hey, you know, I found the scripts that you can install that bypass the boot.
Correct.
It thinks you're doing a BIOS upgrade or firmware upgrade, and it kind of bypasses the boot sequence, and then it runs its own script, which then accesses the Linux that's inside of it, or whatever. I think it's Linux it uses, and then it tells it basically these are the instructions that I want you to use. You're going to connect to this hotspot with this password. You're going to then stream. Once you connected to that, then you're going to connect to this RTMP server, or you're going to connect to YouTube, or you're going to connect to Facebook, or wherever you want to connect to. These are the passwords for that. This is how you do it. And then you're going to stream at this resolution, 480, 640, or 640, or 720, or 1080. I don't think we can go any higher than 1080. And boom, it does it. And if it loses signal, sometimes like at Daytona, we'd be in the banking back in the old days, and we would completely lose the signal out of the cars because where the antennas were mounted. And, the cellular antennas. So as we were going through the corners, that sucked. So Paulie would just go over to a track camera and then pick them up as they came back on the straights. But
Nice.
yeah, it was difficult trying to learn how to do all this stuff. But and if it lost a signal, it would repeatedly try to reconnect, and boom, we'd get it back. So for the most part, we'd get them back. And then as we've progressed, we've just got a little better camera. We've got a little better setup. And this past weekend, I was able to find DJI just released a really cool 5G setup that we could use at the camera at the track, or not 5G. What is it? Wi-Fi 6 setup that we can use at the track, and then send across through cellular from there. And I actually looked at the specs, and it looks like every track but Road America we should be able to use it at. But they're $2,500 each. And that's the problem. For a TV crew that goes in, they're looking at, I know the budgets of some of these series like Grid Life or whatever for their TV stuff. It's if I spend that much money for our show, and the return that we get on it, our people would just fire me. So there's no way I can go out and spend that. But
but even Grid Life, though, is not doing what they used to do. I mean, they don't do the level of productions now that they used to do. They just couldn't afford to keep sustaining that.
It's expensive, and the return on all this stuff is like nothing. It's you have to sell advertising, and nobody wants to pay for advertising. The kind of money that you need to get to do that kind of streaming.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so Eric, you've helped out a lot of teams. Oh, and what I was trying to get at was the Verizon setup. So, there was always this question about what cellular company do I use? At the time, it was like, do I use Sprint, T-Mobile, blah,
Sure.
blah, blah, Verizon, AT&T, and everybody's fighting over supremacy. But when you went to the tracks, for the most part, almost all the tracks had better Verizon than anything else, with the exception of out west and some of the Texas tracks. Like Coda has rings of service, which is really cool how they have it set up. And I guess Verizon is the third one. So yeah, it's okay. It did perfect for our shows. We had a good show there. But if we had AT&T, it was even better.
Well, and if you went to back in the day when it was the Sprint Cup Series, any NASCAR track.
Oh yeah, Sprint was
the only thing you needed was Sprint, because
that's pretty much
that
all
was
you
the
could
only
get.
provider.
Yeah,
right. Now that that's gone, it's not quite as prevalent there. But
no, and what helped us too was IndyCar having a Verizon.
Right.
Yeah, Verizon.
Absolutely.
So. I think one of the best shows we ever did was Sebring one year, where the hurricane had come through earlier, and they'd set up all these Verizon temporary towers around the track for the local people. And man, it was like the
Correct.
best, the best internet we'd ever had there. So now now there are different levels of SIM cards. Can you explain that?
So over the course of time, Verizon has realized that if everybody gets unlimited data, they've got to figure out a way to manage the network so that certain people that are paying more will get a different level of service. Like American Airlines, Delta, Continental, they will sell you multiple classes of service if you pay a certain rate. And that exists to this day. You could buy Verizon prepaid data, and to the uninformed, they're thinking, hey, this is Verizon, it's data, it's going to be great. They go to the racetrack, and guess what? They don't have priority access to the network. And because they don't have priority access to the network, their telemetry drops, their video streaming buffers, and now they've wasted a ton of time, and all that money that they spent is all thrown out the window. But if you get a guy like me or someone at the local store that is educated in this and knows exactly what you're doing, well, then they can tailor a solution or just tell you that the best information for you so that you get that high priority access to the network. Verizon actually has updated their plans recently and started selling premium data, so high priority data for cell phones, obviously, but for routers and consumer rated routers. We call them jetpacks, and people are getting much better signal, especially with some of these newer 5G consumer grade routers. We've been selling a ton of them to SCCA racers that are seeing significant speeds, enough to do the upload and download. Well, primarily upload. Upload speed is what you really want for live streaming. That's the basic gist of it.
Yeah, that's
just
I think that's the big
access
thing is
to whichever network.
Yeah, and the upload. I mean, it's people talk about the I can download all. That's all good and well, but when you're doing video, it needs to be the upload speed, and a lot of them
it's all about the upload,
and a lot of them didn't do that. Just had Jim Uteg, who we had on the show recently, and he wants to talk to you. I'm sending him your phone number now, and your address.
Please do.
Yeah. So you've got we've got different levels of service, and so I'm getting ready to go to a racetrack. Of course, everybody's focused on making sure the tires are spinning, the bearings are good, the engine starts at least to get on the trailer. Everything's tuned up, ready to go. But but they always wait till the last second to get their number panels and their streaming setup going. It's always that one guy that gets stuck with it and he waits till the last minute. Cause a lot of guys, they're busy doing life during the week, and come Thursday, all right, now I have to get this race car ready. So come Thursday afternoon, they're having, what do I do? Where do I get a hotspot from? Where do I get a hotspot from to make this camera my buddy bought and he told me to hook up? And my GoPro here, and how do I get it connected to the internet and to YouTube? How do I go about doing that, Eric?
You know, and I, to every one of those guys, I say to them, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I always say to them, you know, depending on what system you have, we could activate a quick SIM card on your existing Verizon account, and I'll send them. You know, we have people in the paddock. Bill, I know you carry a bunch of SIM cards around with you that I've given you, but if I can make it easy, I will. If I can schedule a phone call with them to do some consulting about how they use or plan to use or why they plan to use streaming, then we'll push it out for the next week. Part of the reason that I want to spend time in ChampCar Garage is to get people to start thinking about this stuff sooner. Not so much about the cost of it, but really, I don't want them to lose out on their cars because they didn't have this. This, from what we've seen over the last 5 years, people don't really care about streaming their video to YouTube so that their friends can watch it, but rather it's to keep the driver in check so he doesn't ruin the equipment an hour into the race, hour and 20 minutes,
Right.
hour 40, hours, hour 50. And that's why they want to do it. So I'm having these conversations with teams. I mean, the one thing I don't do is I don't go out and solicit, business. I actually don't have the time for that. And for the most part, I don't want to be that guy that is the sleazy salesman that you can see, 8 miles away. But I do want to be known as the resource, and I think I've solidified myself as like the guy that you can always ask questions to. And if I've got the time to do it, I'm going to do it. In certain situations, teams from Canada have reached out to me, and I feel bad for those guys because they don't have anything. So I always keep a SIM card ready to be used for a Canadian team. I mean, I've got the SIM card here. I give it to my son. He uses it during the week, and then we swap it into someone's device. Every time he calls me, it comes up as Canadian ChampCar team. so I know exactly where the the SIM card is at any given time.
That's funny.
Now they
but no.
Yeah. So all right, so we're being asked is 5G internet, so it looks like for home internet, a lot of folks are being told, hey, update to this 5G, and he wants to know if it's worth doing versus
I can answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
No.
Well, it depends.
Compared to so I was told a unit like that, and they told me that it was going to be fast enough to replace my business class, and it was not even close. But it was.
But I think a lot of that depends on where you're at, because we were talking about this the other day, Eric, where in some areas, Ultra 5G is really freaking fast, man. And you can really put a lot of stuff through the pipe. Whereas some places you go to, it says 5G, but it's slower than 4G. It's like,
right. This is one of my pet peeves about dealing with Verizon. If you don't have a trusted individual and you're never going to see him and he knows he's never going to see you ever again, he can sell you what you want to hear. Mm-hmm. And when you go back to him, he may not be there. And part of the reason that I love being the Verizon guy for amateur and professional motorsport is because I just want to help. And I have told countless people many a time when looking at their business accounts that, hey, who sold you this router? Like, why did they sell this to your router? Why are you paying, $100 a month for this? And they're like, well, the local agent sold me this. And I tell them why he sold it to them. And actually it just happened the other day where, the individual said, hey, I need this, I've got this Verizon 5G router for my business and it's painfully slow. And I said, well, yeah, that's interesting. It's not a 5G router you were sold. You were sold a 4G router. And the top speed, the capped speed is 10 megabits per second. And he's like, well, that wasn't what I was told at the store. I'm like, I understand
Yeah.
that. I'm like, I know that they sold it to you because they were going to make money and they didn't really care about you. And in his situation, I forget his name, but he in his situation, he in his situation, they said like, hey, you've got a free upgrade and we can make this happen for you pretty easily. And he was like, all right, I'm in. And they left, they added a new device to his account and they left the old device on his account. So he's actually paying more and more and more. It was a guy named Ian Barber. Because I remember he, on December 1st, he actually made a public post and said, I went to my local store, got bamboozled, and, my bill, it stayed the same, but I got sold all these unnecessary devices. And the person could have just as easily said, hey, I can save you $80 per month by doing this and solve your problem. So they solved their problem, which is I'm going to sell you what's available today. And you're not gonna realize that you got screwed,
right?
And that's what I like to do. I'd like to go in and clean things up.
If you're comparing it to your home or your business hardwired internet, it is very dependent on what your location is.
Right.
If you live in Lovingston, Virginia, where there is no internet service,
gigabit. We have gigabit now.
Yeah.
Fiber.
Well, but how long did it take you?
It took me
to get that
20 years, 24 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
So 5 years ago, maybe the wireless internet would be your better option.
Well, we did. That's what we used.
Absolutely.
We used when 4G came out. That's what we were using. It's just 4G. Right. We could watch one movie, and that would be it for the month because we'd be at our almost at our limit.
Here, I was going to say,
it's important to note that.
Go ahead, Eric.
No, I was going to say it's important to note that a business account and a consumer account is looked at differently.
Right.
The devices that they sell you for business are going to be different, and they're going to give you different data rates than they will for consumer. It doesn't sound right, but it is. We looked at someone's situation 3 or 4 weeks ago, actually a ChampCar racer, and he was having a ton of problems with his home wired internet through Xfinity, and he had spent hours and hours and hours. And I said, hey, his name is Mo Dodka.
Oh, I know, Bo.
I said, Mo, why don't you, give this a shot and get the Verizon 5G home for your house? And I said, and if it's not going to work, then guess what? You can just, bring it back, but give it a shot. Don't disconnect your Xfinity. And he loved it. He had a great experience with it. And he was like, Eric, should I get another one? I was like, well, why don't you just position it around the house and see if you're having the problems that you're having with Xfinity. In the case of Xfinity, he was having multiple drops. He could not do Zoom calls with his clients. He's in the real estate world. He's a real estate broker and lawyer. And he's like, Eric, this is making me look bad. He's like, give me a solution that will be good. We checked up his home address. Verizon said there was enough bandwidth in his area to support the Verizon 5G home. Verizon 5G home is not going to give you gigabit speed, but it's going to give you adequate speed to support 20 devices in a household. And for many people, they would much rather have a lower speed, but reliability.
Right. And that's what we have. That's a problem we have, is that my wife has to be able to VPN into the hospital. And our local internet company that supplies us the fiber, for some reason, the VPN for UVA does not work. It does not get through. So it's something to do with the firewall or something. Who knows? But when we go through to the 5G on our cell phones, perfect. It's not great because we're in the middle of nowhere. But yeah.
I mean, 5G has evolved over the last 5 years. 5G means fifth generation. Right. It is constant, and it's in constant evolution. And Verizon, like T-Mobile and AT&T, are evolving. They're trying to give great service to people. And if you look at some of the plans, the cost of the plans is going down, which is great. People don't realize that, but it is. And these 5G home, I mean, it's designed to go after Xfinity. And they're doing a great job at building out the network. I had a call today with a racer. He owns a company called Speed Freaks USA. He's out of Chicago, and I said, "Hey, Anish, his name is Anish Ramra Kiani." And I said, "Anish, have you ever considered 5G home?" I'm like, "I know we've had this conversation." He's like, "Eric," he's like, "the last time we talked about this," he's like, "you told me do not under any circumstance go to 5G home yet, and wait for me, Eric Kaul, to tell him the right time to go." And today that was that day, because I've seen many people that live in his neck of the woods have great success, including my friend Mo. Ironically, Mo and Anish went to high school together. So I was like, "Hi, I feel comfortable in selling this to you now because I've had the experience." I've sold the device to a buddy named Anthony Maganoli. I'm sure you know Anthony.
Oh, Maganoli. I know Anthony very well. MR2 racer at one point. Yeah, all kinds of racing.
I knew we'd get to the MR2 discussion. Oh my God! It took us.
Well, Anthony's the guy
50 minutes.
They won the Nelson Ledges 24 in Scott Barton's BMW, but they also took the nose off of my car. And somewhere we still have to this day not found the radiator from that car. So,
Eric, I want to thank you. You got us to 50 minutes before the MR2 got brought into the discussion.
Somebody yells bingo. John Whitnauer, bingo.
50 minutes. It's been 50 minutes. Wow.
Take a drink, everybody. Take a drink.
There we go.
So yeah, Anthony. Yeah. And Anthony's a good guy. He's I think he used to do the interior designs of some cars, Toyotas to be specific. And then he went on to be a pro racer and traveling the world and doing fun stuff.
He was in Peru this past weekend while we were in PRI.
That's right.
And and I was like, "Dude, you have to stop going away for PRI." And he was like, "I really want to be with you guys, but this Peru opportunity is once in a lifetime, and we've got unfinished business." But they actually finished first in their class and third overall, competing against some high horsepower, some heavy artillery, if you will.
Right.
So, but I will tell you right now that the reason that I raced today is because of Anthony Maganoli. He got me into that club race school after I had not driven with BMW Club for about 8 years at that point. And he vouched for me and said, "Hey, this guy Eric is a good driver, and he'll be an asset to the BMW Club racing community." And I went out and did the club race school and did extremely well and graduated. They said, "Hey, you're one of us." So that was I'm super thankful for him.
So let's go to the 5G versus 4G. You and I had started a conversation at PRI talking about 5G versus 4G. Is it ready for the race car yet, 5G?
It's going to depend on where the track is. And remember this, 4G versus 5G, fourth generation versus fifth generation of the network. Our network is a fourth generation backbone. And over the course of time, they're just upgrading and adding in micro cells, to every neighborhood. Are they going to come to the racetrack anytime soon? Well, it's only if they're, backed by IndyCar will you see the 5G services be better. They're going to focus on download rather than upload, which sucks for us. But a lot of these Verizon customers, they have the ability now to go into their My Verizon app and identify where they have bad service. They can go into their feedback, provide feedback, and say, "Hey, this is a bad area." And the more reports they get, Verizon engineers will spend time and go out there.
So I could stand over.
And that works extremely well.
So I can stand over, and I think it's turn 7 at Pittsburgh, and down there in the valley, and I can stand there with my phone and go, "This sucks," because that's that one spot that you have zero service right down there.
We should all make we should do a track walk and then go walk over there and make these reports together.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, I actually will jump on Facebook and say, like, hey, who had bad service at Eagles Canyon Ranch this weekend? And then I'll go in and I'll type up a report and say, hey, X amount of people had problems there.
The cool thing about that is somehow somebody I know on Facebook knew that we were doing something at Pittsburgh, and I got given a phone number to call a guy, which is always weird. But I called this guy about Verizon, and he was the local engineer for that area.
Oh, nice.
And I told him that the previous year we'd had some problems down in this spot. I showed him on GPS where it was, and that we would lose signal from here, from the bottom of the turn, and we would regain it back up here. And I gave him a couple of little videos that Paul had. And he was able to redirect the antenna, the cell for that, for the track.
That's awesome.
Just, I guess they don't steer it, actually physically steered. It's software driven or something that they do inside. And he was able to give us a little bit more oomph there, and basically said, hey, anytime you guys are coming out, let us know. He's now retired and moved on in life, but yeah, I don't have that contact anymore. But that's always the kind of service that really sold me to on the Verizon setup, because they do work with folks like us.
So I'm going to send you the email address of someone tomorrow, and that I want you to email and say, hey, this is what we do, and this is where we need help. And we'll follow up on that. We'll manage that little project. I've given out that email address a handful of times, and it's been like 93% successful. Right. But they can't help if it's like the day of, like 3 days. I
mean, a lot of it too is, I think now it's every track is really good now. We don't really have any real issues. There's some tracks where we don't have the facilities within the track itself to run a show. I need Ethernet, correct. I need gigabit or 500 meg, something like VIR now has. Unfortunately, they only have one pipe, and I know exactly where that pipe to plug in is at. But, most tracks don't have that. And it's difficult to do what we do now. And plus some tracks are actually shut, it's an extra fee. So how do I explain to the race director that, hey, I need to pay $1,000 for the Ethernet this weekend so that we could get, so we could get a better show. Are we going to get that $1,000 back? No. So I wish we did. I wish we had the kind of money some of these guys with those silver plaques, their YouTube silver and gold plaques on the back get, but we don't get that. What's wrong with Road America, Ozarks? I know Ozarks in the middle of nowhere. Ozarks was actually pretty good for us. The track cameras they give us access to, so we can use that. We actually talked about that in our meeting this past weekend with the tracks at PRI. They have a really good setup. Road America, they don't allow us access to their track cameras for legal purposes. Our coverage for our track cameras is actually really, really good there. And I'm pretty certain that even the AT&T guys do well at Road America.
Yeah. So AT&T does better than Verizon. Yeah. Verizon has a tendency to drop out on the back. Yeah. On the back carousel.
Well,
back stretch.
Canada Corner is a little weak there too, but we completely lose it in the in the shed where we do tech inspections, which sucks, especially when you're trying to fix somebody's car. So, or not fix, but inspect somebody's car. But yeah, Road America does all right for us. So to me, it's not that bad of a track. Now, mind you, I'm not really engineering the show. That's a Paulie thing. So Paulie might have a different story.
Yeah.
So it's,
So interestingly enough, I mean, when people come to me and say, hey, I want to activate a Sentinel and, I need it for this track, I often say to them, hey, you're going to Road America, find out if there's someone that has AT&T, and let's go activate a SIM card on AT&T for the Sentinel. And, to the extent that you're going to go to a track that's great for Verizon, then I'm going to have you do that for Verizon. most of these endurance teams have multiple guys. Not all of them are on Verizon or one carrier. So it helps them to diversify and also spread out the cost to, to other people on the team.
Well, doesn't the
one of the cool
Sentinel
things
have that you can run 2 SIM cards?
Yeah, the Sentinel has a 5G box that you can, bond 2 SIM cards to, and run that as well to get a stronger signal.
So it picks the better of the two, or runs both of them at the same time.
It runs both of them at the same time.
Okay.
My understanding.
Yeah, because I know some TV cameras we looked at from, remember the guys that would do live PD? So I had a really good conversation with those guys. I could actually rent their cameras. So we talked about doing like our IndyCar race. We were looking at renting the live PD cameras. Problem was the cost was just way more than we could handle at the time. But they use bonded cellular, and I think they run 4 or 5 in their packs. I think they were using live view packs, where you had 5 different companies in there, 4 different companies, and it just either goes through every one of them, but one signal will get to you that's really strong. So,
yeah, the live view people.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Will do a survey of your location and the geographic footprint that you typically operate in, and they'll tell you, okay, you want to put your six SIM cards, you want to put in 2 AT&T, 2 Verizon, 2 T-Mobile, or 5 and 2, or whatever. They'll tell you what they think is best for getting a good signal out of that particular location. So they've got some
and plus the SIM cards they send you are at a different level than what we would get for business or for even, I think they're at a news reporting level SIM cards.
Sure.
So whatever the highest one is, or not, that's not safety related. So
industrial grade.
Yeah. So, all right, Eric, we've been at this for almost a little over an hour now. And I want to say,
I don't know where the time
went. Know, really. And we could probably go on for another hour. That's the scary part. How can people contact you?
Yeah. Obviously, if they're on Facebook, they can definitely contact me. Bill, I can send you a picture of my card. And
you mean this
if
one?
They're obviously a regular, yes. Better call. We handed out about 450 of those at PRI this past weekend, primarily putting them on the top of trash cans.
It was awesome because people were taking them.
People were taking them. I actually got on Saturday and Sunday, I got 12 people that reached out from within motorsport saying, hey, I've got problems with Verizon, or hey, I want to get a new phone for my family and activate it on Christmas. Can you help? And that's exactly what we do. We could ship phones to all 50 states pretty inexpensively, actually.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's easy to find me. You can always find me in ChampCar Garage or somewhere on Facebook.
And we're going to have you. And we're going to have you at some of our races this year, which will be cool. So you can talk to Eric there as well.
Absolutely. I'm happy to walk the paddock. I'm not here to sell you. If you just want to chat,
I want to see some hard sells. I want to see some hard sells.
I know. I am the worst salesperson you'll ever meet. I'll be like, no, I kid you not. People ask me all the time, like, oh, I want to get that Verizon deal with the free iPad and the free watch. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. They're going to screw you. It's last year's technology. And people are like, oh, I'm so glad you said something, because I really don't want to be that guy that screws people over. I really want to lead with integrity, lead with honesty. I only have one reputation, and I would much rather be known as a helpful guy than the guy that screws you over.
There you go.
So it's I'm an instructor. I relish the instructor role, that coaching role, same thing, and it's just what I do.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Eric, and we're going to have you on again here next year, and we'll see a lot more of you through Inside ChampCar, ChampCar.Live, and the whole bit. So thanks, Eric.
Oh my God, I'd love to be a guest again. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. That's Eric Kaul, and now Brian and I are going to talk about some race or some PRI stuff real quick, and you're welcome to hang out here, Eric, if you'd like. So
absolutely.
So Brian, you asked me to do all kinds of videos and stuff at PRI. Guess what?
Yeah, did you do it? Did you do any of that?
I got nothing. Absolutely nothing. I
figured that's why.
Chelsea, Ray, and I went there, and we were busy every second of the day. It was crazy. Towards the end there, I did get to hang out with Flagtronics guys. Flagtronics won a huge award, man. I posted that up, and has the SCCA announced it yet?
I don't know.
So they will be using Flagtronics.
So no, that was announced a while back.
Okay, yeah, this weekend they signed a contract. So, yeah,
okay,
yeah, it's pretty big. That's pretty big news for Flagtronics. Yeah. Also, some other series coming on as well, but I'll leave those to those series to talk about.
Yep.
And but yeah, it's they did a lot of stuff. We got a lot of stuff coming down with Flagtronics that's just going to revolutionize my game. You know what we do with the marching ants, with everything. I can't say anything because I'm pretty certain James is listening. It's from Flagtronics. But yeah, we have a lot going on with that. So we were able to walk the show and talk to a lot of groups. We've got a big safety manufacturer that we're talking with right now. I got a meeting with them later this week. That could be kind of big for ChampCar. We'll see where that goes. I also said the same thing last year. A couple of them just didn't, So
yeah,
it's the way it works in this industry.
I've got faith in you.
Yeah, we're working it, and got a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, we got sold out race coming up, Sebring. We had a couple of teams drop out. I think Tuttle called us today, and he's dropping out. He's just so busy with work, he can't make it. He's a land developer. I guess developers kind of get busy. I don't know. I don't have that kind of money, but he's not coming. So that opened up a spot for another team, and Chelsea put the next one in line on it. So if you want to go to Sebring, make sure you contact Chelsea Vickery. Her number's on the all over the website and also on the supplementals for that race. Get your name on that list. We got early pay expired on December 5th, a couple days ago. That for Road Atlanta, which is our first race of the 2024 season. That race, 30 cars signed up right now. We have a limit on that. We will not go past that limit. So you guys need to get your money in, get signed up. Now, I wanted to let everybody know, I've kind of said this in the past a bit. We are going to raise the membership fees for 2024 up $25. There'll be a total of $75 for the year. We've never had a price increase on that until this year. So it's always held at 50. We're sorry about that, but we have to look at the business side of this company and or the club, and that's going to go up. But I don't think it's going to be a big deal. So $75. I mean, what do you pay for the SCCA? I swear I paid $100.
It's more than 75.
Yeah. So yeah. You get a lot. We're still one of the cheapest to enter for endurance races, even though we had to raise the prices a bit this year, again, to cover our costs. You folks know that we may have had some issues here recently, but those are now gone and we're doing quite well. So, but yeah, it's, what else is coming up? Oh,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if we're wrapping up and Eric mentioned it just briefly, James Candelaria, who a lot of us know and are friends with, is facing a rather significant health situation at the moment.
Big time.
And he put a very heartwarming note out on Facebook. So anyone who knows James can go check that out. But I just wanted to say from all of us, James, if you're watching, we're thinking about you. We're pulling for you. And if there's anything that any of us can do, you all know how to find us. So,
yep. And
I was on before we started this show. I was actually on the phone with James. He's like extremely tired, but he said the pump that they put into his heart has actually given him a ton of energy. And
good.
But he can't do anything, and that sucks. Yeah, because I've been in the hospital for heart issues too before. Not like his. His is freaking bad. But
I asked him, I was like, hey, do you mind taking visitors? He said, absolutely. You can absolutely come on down, but, give him a few days in advance. And actually before the call with him, I was on the phone with Mark Petronis, who you probably have
had his own issues here about a year ago or over a year ago.
Yeah, 2.5 years
Yeah,
ago,
that's right.
he had his issues, and ironically, I actually introduced Mark and James to each other about 5 years ago at PRI. So we've been friends ever since. Actually, Mark is one of my admins for the high performance driving and racing enthusiast groups. But no, the two of us were like we'd love to start a GoFundMe, but James is not that guy. He's the first person to fund somebody that's in need, but not the type to take monetary
Right.
support. But he said it, or Eileen said it today, like they need prayers, they need our help. They're pretty much covered on all of the major stuff, but they just need our prayers, and to think about donating blood, if you're a donator of blood, but just keep them in our thoughts and prayers.
Yep.
And all we can do
He's
is
a strong.
pray.
He's
Could be
young.
weeks,
He's
could be
in his
months.
early 40s. He's a strong kid. He'll work his way through this. Science is pretty good. The
he's
science on this stuff is pretty damn good. So
absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
all right, somebody brought
So
up.
Brian, thanks so much for drawing that.
And over to the other bad side, the election. We're waiting for Tiffany to complete her review of what we did, and once she reviews that, we will be going to the board and then letting the folks know that were involved in the election. Let them know how it went.
I'm your new president. No, just
and
kidding.
Brian is the new president of and
No, I'm not.
we'll let everybody know. Then we'll let everybody know on the 15th what the results were, and I want to thank everybody again. Over 500 people participated in this election, and it's pretty freaking awesome how that happened.
Great.
In the past, we've only had maybe 100 to 200 people participate out of thousands, 4,000 or 5,000, between 4,000 and 5,000 registered members. So that's pretty good. We'll let them know.
Yeah.
Then we progress on to 2024. Thank you again, Eric, for joining us. And Brian, thanks again for taking some time out on your trip there to join us and help me out here. Cause this is such a difficult thing to do. Talk to people. I have a hard time. So
no, you don't.
I'm really good at it. So if you ever need me to be your guest,
oh, okay. That's good.
You got a guest co-host.
Yeah. I'm just going to sit here and sleep. Let Eric talk. All right, let's start this again. That's going to do it for another episode of Inside ChampCar. If you liked what you heard, subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss any episodes. It would be also great if you could share it on your social media channels, and you can comment on the ChampCar Endurance Series Facebook page, especially if it's a good one. We have a new episode every week. I'm Bill Strong. He's Brian Bielanski and Eric Kaul, and you're listening to the Racing Wire Podcast Network.